Hello. So we're on chapter 15 on the lesson before dying, page 110. So we left off at on sexy time they had on chapter 14, where they were in the plantation and they were talking about living together and their kids, like their future kids and what they were going to look like. That's what they talked about. So chapter 15 was left off, well, chapter 14 left off at pretty much they were making out in the chapter 14. Okay, so we will continue on page 110. Vivian stood with her back to me while I brushed off her blazer and her skirt. A few small blades of yellow grass clung to her hair. I removed them and picked up her purse, and I could see how clean the ground was where we had lain, and I could see where she had dug her heels into the ground. We left the field and started for the main road to return to the quarter. It had become colder, and we had walked faster than we had when we came out into the field. We start our Christmas program next week, Vivian said. It's about that time, huh? You're having a program, aren't you? I don't know. I hadn't given it much thought. You only have about a month. I guess I'll mention it to the children tomorrow. I'll see what they want. That stuff is Bayon's been keeping me so busy. I've just about forgotten everything else. What are you going to see him again? I don't know. His Nana, my aunt, and their pastor are going up there tomorrow. I'll probably go Friday. I don't know. You have any idea? She said, not looking at me directly. I thought I knew what she was talking about. It's up to the big boss in Baton Rouge, I said. Vivian was quiet. We crossed the railroad tracks and entered the quarter. People were leaving church and coming out into the road. You think your aunt has made it home? Vivian asked. She's usually the last one to leave. You want me to go before she gets home? I want you to stay. You think we'll be alright? She'll have to get used to it. I don't want to cause any trouble. There won't be any trouble, I said. We went over all of the last Friday. What happened? She wanted to know what had kept me and Bayonne so long. I told her I was with you. That's all. That's all. That's all. I want her to like me. She will when she gets to know you. I wish I could say the same from them in Freela Cove. Vivian had met and married a dark-skinned boy while attending Xavier University in New Orleans. She had not told her people about the wedding because she knew that they would be opposed to it. After she and the boy married, she took him back to Freela Cove. Everything turned out just as she had feared. Her family had nothing to say to her husband and hardly anything to say to her. She never went back. When the first child was born, she took the baby to visit. No one held the child or gave it a present or any attention. That was 3 years ago, and she had not been home since, not even when the second child was born, nor when she separated from her husband. One of her sisters visited her sometimes, and occasionally a male cousin would see her in Bayonne. Her mother and aunt wrote letters. There was no other communication. Vivian and I stood on the porch and watched my aunt, Miss Emma, Miss Eloise, Ines, come down the quarter. I saw my aunt looking at Vivian's little blue Chevrolet parked in front of the house, then looking towards the house. The woman around her went on talking, but she was much more concerned with Vivian and me than with their conversation. They stopped before the house, and I saw Miss Eloise talking to my aunt. I am sure she was talking to her whether they should come in or not. My aunt said yes, because they all proceeded into the yard. Walking Indian file, my aunt in front, I introduced her to Vivian, and soon as she came up to the steps, Miss, my aunt said, and gave a slight nod. She didn't look at me. I introduced Vivian to the other woman. How do you do? Miss Eloise said. How are you? Miss Emma said. Glad to know you, Ines said. But they were not glad to know her. They didn't feel comfortable at all. They were at my aunt's house, and they were not about to show much more enthusiasm than she had shown. They went inside in single file. You could smell their sweat powder all over the place. You think I ought to go? Vivian said. No, come inside. Come on inside. We had to pass through my aunt's room to go back into the kitchen. Tante Lou and the other women had taken off their hats and coats and laid them, along their pocketbooks, on the bed. They were in the kitchen, sitting at the table. My aunt had brought them here for coffee and cake. I'll have to make some more coffee, I said. I'll make my own coffee, my aunt said. I'll make it, I said. Not here. Vivian and I drank the coffee, and I'll make more. That's all there is to it. You going to walk over me? She asked. No, ma'am, I'm going around you, I said, but I'm going to make the coffee. I filled the kettle with water and set it on the stove. My aunt was watching me. Her friends sitting at the table were quiet. Grant, Vivian said, I think, just be quiet. You taking over my house? My aunt said. No, ma'am, I said, but we drank the coffee, and this is the woman I'm going to marry one day, so you might as well start getting along right now. The women at the table did not look at us and were afraid to look at one another. My aunt was like a boulder in the road, unmovable, so I had to go around her. She could see that I was not going to change my mind, and she had three choices. She could stop me physically, she could have the room, or she could sit down at the table with her friends. She was afraid to approach me physically, because I might leave and not come back. If she left the kitchen, then her friends would leave. If she sat at the table, only her pride would be hurt. She thought that was best. How was service today, Miss Eloise? I asked. Oh, fine. She said it so fast that it sounded like only one word. I grinched to myself. Oh, fine. She said it so fast that it sounded like only one word. I grinned to myself. You find anything funny in that, mister? My aunt asked, looking at me again. No, ma'am, I said. She stared at me long enough to let me know that it was not over between her and me. Not yet. She turned to Vivian, not saying anything, just contemplating her. The other women were quiet, looking either down at the table or out the back door, but never at one another. I hear you from Filakov, my aunt said to Vivian. Yes, ma'am. I hear they don't like dark-skinned people back there. Some of them don't, Vivian said. Not all of them? My aunt questioned her. No, ma'am. How about your own folks? I don't visit back there, Vivian said. You don't love your mama? You don't love your daddy? I love both of them, Vivian said and looked at me. But I have to live my own life. You go to church? I'm Catholic. My aunt looked at Vivian and nodded her head, as if she was thinking, what else could you possibly be? You went to church today? I went to 9 o'clock mass, Vivian said. You going next Sunday? Yes, ma'am. Sunday after that? I hope so. This one, my aunt said, nodding towards me but still looking at Vivian. You don't have a church. What y'all gonna do then? We'll work it out, Vivian said. You gonna leave your church? I hope I don't have to, Vivian said. But if I had to, then I suppose I would. You'll leave your church and just become nothing? We'll work it out, Vivian said. My aunt nodded her head. I hope you know what you're doing, young lady. I think that water is hot, I said. I poured water over the fresh coffee grounds and watched the container fill up, and when the level went down, I poured in more water. Now the aroma of the coffee had taken over from the lady's powder, or maybe it was because it was closer to the coffee pot than I was to the table. Get some dishes out of the safe, I said to Vivian. Cups and saucers, and 4 plates for cake? Grant? Just do what I said, I told her. She brought the 4 cups and saucers to the stove on a tray, and I poured hot water into one of the cups. Vivian rinsed out all the other cups and poured the water into the dishpan on the window shelf. She set the tray of cups on the shelf and went back, and I was pouring it in, fork on each plate and placed cake before the woman. They said thanks, but they said it quietly. Vivian came back to the window for the coffee. Everyone said thanks again. Thank you, ma'am, my aunt said politely. My aunt knew how to make you feel that she was of a lower case and you were being too kind to her. That was the picture she presented, but not nearly how she felt. Vivian and I went out onto the porch. I'm glad to get out of there. I'm glad to get out of there, Vivian said. She's pulled the jazz on others, I said. It's not going to work this time enough. Well, I see that's mine. Well, I see that mine and not. Well, I see that mine are not the only ones, Vivian said. It's this. It's not the same thing, I said. Far from being the same thing. Vivian became very quiet. Then, well, I better be going. Something I said? No, it's getting late. That's all. I have to get my purses in. I have to get my purse and tell them goodbye. She went back inside and she must have stood off a good distance away from the table because I could hear them clearly from the porch. Oh, sorry. Something. I need some water. Sorry. Something I said? No, it's getting late. That's all. I have to get my purse and tell them goodbye. She went back inside, and she must have stood a good distance away from the table, because I could hear them clearly from the porch. I come to say I'm leaving, Vivian said. It was good meeting you all. There was silence a while. Then I heard my aunt saying, You're a lady of quality. Quality ain't cheap. Thank you, ma'am. Don't give up God, my aunt said. No matter what, no matter what, no matter what, don't ever do that. Yes, ma'am. You're a lady of quality, my aunt repeated. And a pretty young lady, too, Miss Eloise said. That's for sure, Ines chipped in. A pretty young lady. Good manners. Quality is what you have. Quality. They were quiet again. Maybe they didn't have any more. Maybe they didn't have any more to say to Vivian. Vivian came back outside and went out to the car. Well, what do you think of the place? I asked her. Still think it's pastoral? It is pastoral, she said, looking around. One of the Washington boys and a Herbert girl came from up the quarter, holding hands. They had just left church. The boy wearing a black suit, a white shirt, and a tie. The girl wore a light blue coat over her dress. Both of them spoke to me at the same time, saying, "How are you, Mr. Wiggin?" And they nodded to Vivian as they went by us, still holding hands. Good luck, I thought to myself. Vivian was watching them too, as they continued down the quarter. I'm glad I met your aunt and her friends, she said. They'll have, they'll have a lot to talk about, I said. You think I did okay? With all that quality, how could you fail? Vivian smiled without opening her mouth. I kissed her on the tip of her nose. She said. Not in public. I have too much quality for that. Oh man. This is an awesome relationship. Like, this is genuinely, like, love, you know? Very poetic. Genuine love. Yeah, it was very, like, the introduction to Vivian. Intro to Vivian to Aunt and friends. She has quality. She has quality and had coffee. Coffee and cake? Okay, so that was pretty much chapter 15. Um, we'll start chapter 16.